Good evening, everyone. My name is Shashwat DC, and on behalf of Azim Premji University, I'd like to welcome you to this very special webcast that has been designed to celebrate the life and legacy of Sunderlal Bahugana. Today also happens to be a very special day. It is World Environment Day, and like every year, we have a theme for this year too, that is ecosystem restoration. It might seem a mouthful to say, but actually it basically means reviving forest amongst the hills, the barren lands, and even in our cities. And this theme is not really valid for just a year. It is a theme that is supposed to go on for the next decade. For the next 10 years, we have to work together towards reviving, reimagining, and recreating our urban spaces and our forests and everything to bring some sort of harmony between the nature and us. There are three ways to do it, which has been stated by the World Environment Forum. That is reimagine, recreate, and restore. In a very unique sort of way. When we were working on this program, we kind of realized that this maps directly to the message that Sunderlal Bahugana ji gave us through his life, and that was about about afforestation, about not cutting trees, about living in harmony. His three guru mantras that were there: austerity, afforestation, and alternatives. If you really look, they map very beautifully to reimagine, recreate, and restore. And that's not all. There are many ways in which his message that he gave us at that time in the 70s and 80s are very much relevant today, and more so in the days to go ahead. So on this momentous day, we are very proud to be associated with this program. Azim Premji University has been proud to associate with this program and working with numerous partners to bring this with you. We also have a whole bouquet of programs which have been running through the day. There was a program earlier on our YouTube channel about, we had Sushil Bahuguna, a journalist, talking about environment. There's one coming up after that. What it actually does is underscores our commitment towards environmental and natural issues. And we have been doing this, over a period of time through our Seeking Sustainability initiative. And this is a part of that program is, like for instance, we have been doing the nature writing for children workshop. We have been doing nature in our cities. And this program is also one of them. Getting on with the program ahead, I would like to invite, a noted theatre personality and a playwright himself, Vijay Patki, from the Bangalore Little Theatre's group. He'll be joining us. Hi, Vijay. So he'll be, Vijay, I would like you to share with us the genesis of this program and the numerous partners that are working with us and how this came through and how we are working together. Thank you. Over to you, Vijay.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to speak on behalf of the group that got together to put this program in place. I'll keep it short. We want to give more time to people who we want to listen to. Well, it all began with a WhatsApp message less than 3 weeks ago. The message was from my young colleague, Kavya Srinivasan, asking if there was something we could do to remember Sri Sunderlal Bahugana, perhaps on World Environment Day. I saw that it was her gentle way of reminding me that I had been sitting on her draft play script for a while. The new play we're working on is set in Uttarakhand with the Chipko Andolan as the backdrop. This is a new play in BLT's long-term program called The History of Ideas. There have been 18 plays in this program so far. So that is how the idea of a memorial event for Sunderlalji emerged. Many thanks to Kavya for that. Kavya, take a bow. If you can, if Shashwat can show us your face for just a moment, please take a bow.
Thank you, baby. Thank you.
So we asked our friends in Wipro Sustainability, Azim Premji University, Visthar, and WWF if we could put together a program jointly. The work of Bangalore Little Theatre and sustainability education had led to collaborative associations with these institutions over the years. P.S. Narayan and Lingaraj Dine in Wipro, Harini Nagendra in Azim Premji University, David Salvaraj in Visthar, and Radhika Suri in WWF were quick in their responses and very enthusiastic. Things moved fast after that, each institution offering suggestions and assistance for the conduct of the memorial event. I got in touch with my old faculty colleague from IIM Bangalore, Professor Jayanta Bandyopadhyay, who readily agreed to be part of the event. Mr. Shashwat at the university got in touch with Sri Dhum Singh Negi. WWF suggested a symbolic tree planting ceremony, and David Salvaraj and Visthar jumped at the suggestion and arranged the tree planting at their beautiful campus. More about David and Visthar a little later. Azim Premji University stepped in and took charge of all the organizational tasks. Thanks to Shashwat for that. And that is how we are meeting this evening in a demonstration of the power of purposeful collaboration. It has been a great delight for Kavya and me to watch the event taking shape so nicely and so smoothly. That should do by way of a backgrounder. Thank you, Shashwat.
Thanks so much, Vijay. And without much ado, yeah, this is really collaborative. And I was just speaking to someone that this is a complete collaboration which spans all across India. We have, for instance, I'll bring Negiji online just a minute. Yes, we have Negiji here joining us from Garhwal, in Uttarakhand. Namaskar, Negiji. And we have Jayanta, he's joining from Calcutta. Yeah. So just before yeah, namaskar. So before I start, I'll just like to briefly introduce. First, I'm sure both of you they don't need introduction per se, but still, it's my duty as a host to briefly talk about this. So, Doom Singh Negiji, for all who are ignorant and unaware, Doom Singh Negiji is a Gandhian eco warrior, an activist, writer, and scientist. He has closely worked with Sunderlal Bahuguna. He even was part of his famous Padyatra across the Himalayas in the 70s and the 80s. He was subsequently associated with the Chipko Movement and subsequently the Sarvodaya movement. He has been a big proponent of forest conservation and plantation, and he was also part of the Beach Bachao Andolan. So he has been doing a very great work in the conservation domain in Garhwal and inspiring people, students, and lots of younger generation now, which are getting old. Of course, he has been doing that for very many years. So, Doom Singh Negiji is there. Dr. Jayanta Bandyopadhyay is a distinguished fellow from the Observer Research Foundation, which happens to be India's top think tank. He has also been, closely worked with Sunderlal Bahuguna and the Chipko movement. He's also a consistent researcher on various critical policy issues related to environment in Asia, especially rivers originating in Himalaya. Now, there's so much we can talk about Jayanta and his work, but I'll just briefly suffice. We are honored to have him on board for this. Welcome on board, Jayanta.
Thank you.
So I would like to नेगी जी हम आपके साथ आज के दिन की शुरुआत करना चाहेंगे. आप हमारे आपका संदेश शेयर वो कर सकते हैं. आपके जो एक्सपीरियंसेस रहे सुंदरलाल जी के साथ और आपके जो भी विचार हैं हमारे साथ करें तो बहुत हम धन्य होंगे.
जी मुझे बड़ी खुशी है
आप सबसे मिलते हुए जयंत जी हैं?
हाँ जी।
जयंत जी मौजूद हैं?
हाँ जी, मैं हूँ इधर।
नमस्कार नमस्कार जयंत जी।
प्रणाम प्रणाम।
प्रणाम। मैं बहुत आभारी हूँ शाश्वत जी का और उनके साथ सभी विजय जी का, और ये अजीम प्रेम जी विश्वविद्यालय का, कि उन्होंने मुझे आप सबके साथ बातचीत करने का अवसर दिया है। विश्व पर्यावरण दिवस पर आज मैं सबसे पहले घनश्याम रतुड़ी सैलानी जी का एक गीत जो गढ़वाली में है, यदि आपकी आज्ञा हो तो मैं उसको रखना चाहता हूँ। क्या ये ठीक रहेगा कि मैं इस गीत के साथ ही शुरुआत करूँ अपनी बात को? जयंत जी।
हाँ जी, बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
घनश्याम
आवाज
रतुड़ी
आवाज सुनाई
सैलानी।
दे रही है? हाँ, आप गाइए।
जी हाँ। मेरी आवाज आ रही है ना? साफ आ रही है?
जी बिल्कुल साफ आ रही है।
आवाज ठीक? अच्छा, ये गढ़वाली में है और मैं समझता हूँ कि जयंत जी गढ़वाली बहुत कुछ समझते होंगे, और
जी
इस
बिल्कुल।
गीत का जो भाव है वो उसको बाद में ट्रांसलेट करेंगे। तो ये चिपको का गीत है, और उन्होंने ये गीत एक कार्यक्रम के दौरान ही इसकी रचना की है, और इस गीत के द्वारा एक ऐसा जागरण जो है पैदा हुआ है पूरे उत्तराखंड में, जो कि सीधे वन नीति में परिवर्तन के लिए असरकारक हुआ। तो गीत इस प्रकार है। खड़ा उठा भय बंधु सब कट्ठा होला, सरकारी नीति से जंगलों बचौला, ठेकेदारी प्रथा से जंगल कटेगे, बुरा ऐजा समाकाल बरखा हटेगे, पहाड़ों में जंगलों की तबाही होएगी, जंगलों को सब लाभ ठेकेदार खाएगे, बरसों बीती हमून जंगल पाया, पीढ़ी दर पीढ़ी जंगल जगवाया, पूंजीपति जंगलों से पैसा कमाਉਂਦਾ, पहाड़ी छोरा भैर भांडा मंजौंदा, दिशा को कारखानों आज बरेली, दिशा का घाव लग गया तैसे बड़े खलेली, खड़ा उठा भाई बंधु सब कट्ठा होला, ठेकेदारी प्रथा से जंगल बचौला, सरकार मालदार जंगल काटे रहे, नया पेड़ नया बन कोई नहीं लगे रहे, जंगलात विभाग अरण्य पाल, पर ही उल्टा हो गया जंगलों का काल, अब यूं सी जंगलों की कोई आशा नहीं था, जंगल बचाने को यूं की भाषा नहीं था, चिपका पेड़ों पर अब न कटने दिया, जंगलों की संपत्ति अब न लुटने दिया, पकड़ा से ले पर उदन बगन दिया, पहाड़ों की संपत्ति अब न लुटने दिया। ये आंदोलन तो सीधा आह्वान है कि चिपको पर पेड़ों से चिपक जाओ, अब मत कटने दो। ये अहिंसक प्रतिकार है कि हम अपने जान दे देंगे लेकिन शांतिपूर्ण ढंग से अपने पेड़ बचाएंगे। ये घनश्याम रतुड़ी सैलानी जी का ये जंगलों को बचाने का सीधा आह्वान है। घनश्याली जी ने, सैलानी जी ने पेड़ लगाने का भी एक बड़ा सुंदर गीत रचा है। समय मिलेगा तो मैं उसको भी आपके सामने रखूंगा। और उन्होंने जंगल लगाने का भी आह्वान किया है। जंगल काटने का तो उन्होंने आह्वान किया तो बचाने का, लेकिन लगाने का भी है। एक उसका रचनात्मक संदेश भी है कि हम जंगल बचाने के लिए तैयार हैं, उसके लिए सरकार से संघर्ष करने को तैयार हैं, लेकिन जहां जंगल कट गए हैं और पहाड़ की ढलान जो है नंगी हो गई है, वहां हम जंगल लगा करके फिर हरा भरा करेंगे। अब मैं विश्व पर्यावरण दिवस पर क्योंकि ये एक ऐसा आज का दिन इसलिए भी हमारे लिए महत्वपूर्ण है कि जिन महापुरुष ने पर्यावरण का अलख जो है पूरी दुनिया में जगाया है, उत्तराखंड के एक गांव से शुरू होकर के और पूरे देश और दुनिया में एक नया संदेश दिया है, उनको स्मरण करते हुए, उनको अपनी श्रद्धांजलि देते हुए मैं कुछ बातें रखना चाहता हूं। विश्व पर्यावरण दिवस पर आज मैं सबसे पहले जंगल को आग बुझाते हुए आग की चपेट में आ जाने से कुछ ऐसे लोग जिन्होंने अपने जीवन उसमें गंवा दिया है, ऐसे वनवासियों पर्वतवासियों के चले जाने पर और ऐसे वन कर्मियों के प्रति अपनी श्रद्धांजलि अर्पित करता हूं जिन्होंने अपना जीवन आग की जंगलों की रक्षा के लिए बलिदान कर दिया है। उत्तराखंड में जंगलों में आग की एक भयंकर घटनाएं जो है हर वर्ष होती हैं, बड़े प्रयास किए जाते हैं, फिर भी उसकी सुविचारित कोई ऐसी योजना नहीं है जिससे कि समय से पहले ऐसी व्यवस्था की जाए, आग न लगे। उस आग को बुझाते हुए वनकर्मी भी जल करके भस्म हुए हैं और गांव के लोग भी उसमें जल करके अपनी जीवन लीला समाप्त कर चुके हैं। उनके प्रति श्रद्धांजलि। दूसरी श्रद्धांजलि मैं इस अवसर पर पर्यावरण की दृष्टि से ही महत्वपूर्ण जोशीमठ बद्रीनाथ हाईवे पर ऋषि गंगा और धौली गंगा दो प्रसिद्ध नदियां हैं जो आगे जाकर के अलकनंदा में मिल जाती हैं और अलकनंदा आगे जाकर के भागीरथी में देवप्रयाग में मिल जाती हैं। उसी ऋषि गंगा धौली गंगा के कैचमेंट एरिया में हिमस्खलन ग्लेशियर के टूट जाने से ऋषि गंगा में भयंकर बाढ़ आई और उसमें दो विद्युत परियोजनाएं ध्वस्त हो गई और इस तबाही में उस प्रोजेक्ट के 200 से अधिक व्यक्ति जो है बह करके अपनी जीवन लीला समाप्त कर चुके हैं। उसमें से कईयों के तो सब भी डेड बॉडी भी आज तक नहीं मिली है, तो उनके प्रति भी मैं अपनी श्रद्धांजलि देना चाहता हूं, क्योंकि पर्यावरणविदों के, पर्यावरण कार्यकर्ताओं के, जानकारों के चेतावनी देने के बावजूद भी ऐसे संवेदनशील जिलों में जहां पर कि निरंतर बाढ़ आती है और नदियों का बहाव बहुत तेज होता है, ग्लेशियर पिघलते हैं, टूटते हैं और फिर भयंकर बाढ़ आ जाती है, इन परियोजनाओं को बनाने के विरुद्ध चेतावनी दी थी। दूसरा, इस समय पर्यावरण की दृष्टि से एक अन्य महत्वपूर्ण मुद्दा हमारे उत्तराखंड में है, जो कि चार धाम परियोजना के नाम पर, धर्म और आस्था के नाम पर, पर्यटन और विकास के नाम पर जंगलों को बेतहाशा ढंग से काटा गया है, बहुत जल्दी काटा गया है। हम कार्यकर्ता भी हक्का बक्के रह गए, क्योंकि बड़ी बड़ी मशीनों के द्वारा, जिनको हम सुंदरलाल जी के भाषणों में सुनते थे कि पाश्चात्य देशों में, विकसित देशों में भारी भारी मशीनों से किस प्रकार से मिनटों में बड़े बड़े विशाल वृक्ष काट दिए जाते हैं, वो हमें इस चार धाम परियोजना में ऑल ओवर रोड में देखने को मिले हैं। जब तक लोगों को सूचना मिलती है तब तक सारे पेड़ काट दिए जाते हैं और साथ ही बड़ी भारी भारी मशीनों से, जबकि हम टेरी बांध विरोधी आंदोलन में हम टेरी बांध बनाने वालों के खिलाफ खड़े हुए थे कि डायनामाइट से विस्फोट न हो, लेकिन यहाँ तो ऐसी भारी भारी मशीनें थी पहाड़ को काटने वाली, जिनमें विस्फोट तो नहीं होता था, लेकिन पूरा पहाड़ जो है उन मशीनों के द्वारा जो छेद किए जाते हैं, इतनी थरथराहट होती थी कि दूर दूर तक पहाड़ जो है वो हिल जाते थे और गांव गांव की जो धरती है वो थरथरा उठती थी। तो इन सब पर्यावरण की दृष्टि से जो लोग प्रभावित हुए हैं, आज पर्यावरण के दिवस दिन पर मैं उनके प्रति भी अपनी सहानुभूति प्रकट करता हूँ, क्योंकि उनको ये सब सहना पड़ा है, भुगतना पड़ रहा है। अब मैं सुंदरलाल जी पर कुछ बात कहना चाहता हूँ। सुंदरलाल जी से जैसा कि शाश्वत जी ने परिचय दिया है और जयंत जी भी जानते हैं कि मैं एक अध्यापक था, लेकिन जैसे सुंदरलाल जी के बारे में बहुत लोग जानते हैं, अपने विद्यार्थी जीवन से ही जब वो सार्वजनिक जीवन में आए और महात्मा गांधी के अनुयायी श्रीदेव सुमन से, अमर शहीद श्रीदेव सुमन से, जिन्होंने कि टिहरी राजशाही के खिलाफ सत्याग्रह किया और यहाँ के जनता के लोक अधिकारों के लिए राजा से संघर्ष मोल लिया। सुंदरलाल बहुगुणा बचपन में ही उनके साथी हो गए थे, उनके अनुयायी हो गए थे। तो सुंदरलाल जी ऐसे लोगों की खोज में रहते थे जो नौजवान हो, क्योंकि उन्होंने एक सूत्र दिया था कि पहाड़ की जवानी और पहाड़ का पानी पहाड़ के काम नहीं आता है, इसलिए पहाड़ के नौजवानों को पलायन करने से रोकना है। और इस कारण वो स्कूलों में, गांवों में ऐसे नौजवानों की खोज में रहते थे। इसी खोज के दौरान, खोज इसलिए भी होती थी क्योंकि गांधी विचार जो है वो चीन के आक्रमण के बाद, जैसे कि आचार्य विनोबा जी ने सुंदरलाल जी को कहा था कि सैनिक शक्ति तो, सशस्त्र सैनिक तो अपनी जगह काम करेंगे, लेकिन हमें सीमांत पर जनता की एक अहिंसक शक्ति भी तैयार करनी है, जो कि दूसरी सुरक्षा दल होगा। इसके लिए भ्रमण करना चाहिए। तो सुंदरलाल जी तो अपने साथियों के साथ, बहुत से उच्च शिक्षा प्राप्त ऐसे साथी उनके साथ थे जो कि इस विचार के साथ उत्तराखंड में घूम रहे थे, पहले भूदान के दौरान, और फिर जो भूदान के दौरान गांव भ्रमण पे उन्हें ये समस्या दिखाई दी कि यहाँ की समस्याएं जंगल की हैं, शराब के कारण जो गांव तबाही हो रहे हैं, महिलाओं का जो संकट बढ़ रहा है, इसलिए इनसे मुक्ति के लिए और जंगलों को बचाने के लिए युवकों को संगठित होना जरूरी है और युवकों के द्वारा महिलाओं को संगठित होना है। तो सुंदरलाल जी इस प्रकार से भ्रमण करते हुए जब मेरे स्कूल में आए, तो मुझे याद है 1964-65 की बात होगी। बिना सूचना के, बिना किसी पूर्व परिचय के, सुंदरलाल जी सुबह सुबह स्कूल में जो प्रार्थना का समय होता है उससे पहले अचानक स्कूल में पहुंच गए। हालांकि उनकी तस्वीर मैंने अखबारों में देख ली थी और उनके बहुत से लेख मैंने पढ़ लिए थे, उनसे मैं प्रभावित हुआ था, लेकिन अचानक स्वयं आकर के उन्होंने दर्शन दिए और उनके साथ ही मेरा पहला संवाद हुआ था। तो 1964 या 65 की बात होगी। तब से उनके साथ जो संबंध बना वो जीवन के आखिर तक बना रहा। और बाद में तो मैंने स्कूल से त्याग पत्र दे करके पूरे समय के लिए उनके आह्वान पर उनके साथ काम करने का निश्चय किया। सुंदरलाल जी को बहुत लोग आज, क्योंकि पर्यावरण दिवस है और एक पर्यावरणवादी के रूप में ही जानते हैं, प्रचारित करते हैं, लेकिन जैसे मैंने उनको देखा और समझा, वो एक सतत आंदोलनकारी है। उनका जयंत जी भी जानते हैं, और जैसे मैंने पढ़ा है 8 वर्ष की आयु में, 8 वर्ष की आयु में उन्होंने प्राइमरी परीक्षा पास की अपने गांव मरोड़ा में, जो कि भागीरथी के किनारे बसा हुआ था। तो 8 वर्ष की आयु में प्राइमरी पास करके वो आगे की पढ़ाई के लिए टिहरी आ गए। टिहरी राजशाही की राजधानी, सामंतशाही शासन का केंद्र, और उस समय से लेकर के 8 वर्ष का उम्र का बालक और 1944 तक, तब तक वो इंटर पास उन्होंने कर ली थी, शिक्षा प्राप्त कर ली थी। इस समय तक वो टिहरी में ही रहे और उसी समय वो श्रीदेव सुमन के संपर्क में आए और तभी से वो सार्वजनिक जीवन में लगभग एक प्रकार से उन्होंने पदार्पण कर लिया था। तो तब से लेकर के और जीवन के आखिर तक अपने गांव उन्होंने जो छोड़ा था 8 वर्ष की उम्र में, तब से वो 23 अक्टूबर 1953 में 1973 में तब पहली बार अपने गांव गए। और एक बार जब उन्होंने उत्तराखंड सर्वोदय के मिशन को लेकर के स्वामी राम तीर्थ जी की जन्म शताब्दी पर 120 दिन की 1400 किलोमीटर की पैदल यात्रा उत्तराखंड के गांव की उस दौरान यात्रा के एक पड़ाव के रूप में 23 अक्टूबर को अपने गांव मरोड़ा में गए पूरी जिंदगी भर। बाद में पूरे उत्तराखंड के गांव, पूरे उत्तराखंड की महिलाएं जो कठोर जीवन जी रही हैं, पूरे उत्तराखंड के भाई बहन गांव देहात उनका अपना हो गया और उनके लिए उन्होंने अपना जीवन समर्पित कर दिया। तो सुंदरलाल जी लगातार सतत अपने में परिवर्तन करते रहे और इस परिवर्तन के कारण बहुत लोगों को यह लगता है कि वो एक कोई निश्चय लेकर के नहीं चलते हैं, लेकिन मैंने देखा है और समझा है कि उन्होंने हर मोड़ पर अपने को बदला है और दूरदृष्टि से ये उन्होंने समझ लिया है कि जिस रास्ते पर हम जा रहे हैं बहुत दूर तक हम उसमें नहीं जा सकते हैं और न हम पर्यावरण को बचा सकते हैं और न हम आत्मनिर्भर हो सकते हैं, न हम स्वावलंबी कर सकते हैं, बन सकते हैं, न हम यहाँ की युवा पीढ़ी को पलायन से रोक सकते हैं, न हम अपने धरती को सुल्तान के रूप में देख सकते हैं। इस कारण से उन्होंने कई बार अध्ययन के द्वारा अपने आंदोलन की रूपरेखा बदली है। तो इस प्रकार सुंदरलाल जी मेरी दृष्टि में एक आंदोलनकारी रहे हैं, एक रिसर्चर रहे हैं, शोधकर्ता रहे हैं और साथ ही साथ उनका अपना एक योगी जैसा जीवन भी रहा है। कभी उन्हें अपने आश्रम के प्रति, यद्यपि वो आश्रम के सब कर्ता धर्ता रहे पर्वतीय नवजीवन मंडल के, लेकिन कभी उसी तक बंद करके नहीं रहे हैं और टिहरी बांध आंदोलन के लिए थे उन्होंने अपना आश्रम, जो आश्रम हमारे लिए, हम सबके लिए एक तीर्थ स्थान जैसा है और जहां उन्होंने जीवन के बहुत महत्वपूर्ण कार्य किए हैं और एक पूरे हमारे उत्तराखंड के रचनात्मक कार्यक्रमों का ये केंद्र भी रहा है, उसको उन्होंने ऐसे छोड़ दिया कि बड़ा आश्चर्य होता है कि ये व्यक्ति एक आंदोलनकारी के साथ साथ एक योगी भी है। दूसरी एक और बात मैं कहना चाहता हूँ, हो सकता है मैंने थोड़ा समय ज़्यादा ले लिया हो, लेकिन ये थोड़ा जरूरी भी है। उनने अध्ययन की और अनेक क्षेत्र के प्रभुत्व लोगों को जोड़ने की और हम कार्यकर्ताओं को उन तक पहुंचने की उनकी ऐसी लालसा होती थी कि किसी वैसे मौके को वो खोना नहीं चाहते थे। इसी कारण से हमारे ज्ञान में भी वृद्धि हुई, हमारे लिखने बोलने की क्षमता में वृद्धि हुई, क्योंकि वो स्वयं पत्रकार थे, लेखक थे, साथ ही साथ एक अच्छे संपादक और संवादवाहक भी थे। उनका जितनी पकड़ अपनी गढ़वाली भाषा मातृभाषा में थी, उतनी पकड़ उनको हिंदी भाषा के साहित्य में, लेखन में, संवाद प्रेषण में, उतनी ही क्षमता उनकी अंग्रेजी भाषा के बोलने में, लिखने में, संवाद करने में थी। और श्रोता के समूहों के अनुसार, उनकी रुचि के अनुसार बोलने की और विषय के संप्रण की उनकी अद्भुत क्षमता थी। ये हमारे जीवन में ऐसे अद्भुत व्यक्ति को मिलने का, उनके साथ रहने का और उनसे सीखने का सौभाग्य मिला है, उसे मैं अपने जीवन की बहुत बड़ी उपलब्धि समझता हूँ। अंत में मैं इतना कहना चाहता हूँ, सुंदरलाल जी इस समय हमारे बीच सभी के रूप में विद्यमान तो नहीं है, लेकिन वो इतना कुछ लिख के छोड़ गए हैं, इतना कुछ बोल के छोड़ गए हैं, इतना कुछ वो चल करके, देख करके, अपने फिल्मों के द्वारा, अपने तस्वीरों के द्वारा, क्योंकि वो फ्लैग प्रोजेक्ट अपने साथ रखते थे और वो अपनी खींची हुई तस्वीरों को दर्शकों को दिखाते थे। ऐसा बहुत कुछ छोड़ के चले गए हैं। एक महत्वपूर्ण सवाल और एक महत्वपूर्ण चिंता जो मेरे मन में है, वो इसलिए क्योंकि जितना अधिक समय मैंने उनको देखा और समझा है, और जितना कि लोग उनके बारे में भिन्न प्रतिक्रियाएं व्यक्त करते हैं, करनी भी चाहिए और होना भी चाहिए, आलोचना भी होनी चाहिए, लेकिन बहुत सारी आलोचनाएं बेबुनियाद है, सुनाई है। तो उनका निराकरण तभी हो सकता है जब सुंदरलाल जी को समग्र रूप में समझना होगा, और वो तब समझा जाएगा जब हम उनके कार्यों का, उनके लेखन के, उनके भाषणों का, उनके सारे जो उनके दस्तावेज है, उनकी जो डायरिया है, इतनी बहुमूल्य उनकी डायरिया हैं जिसको वो आशीर्वाद की पुस्तिका कहते थे। जिससे भी मिलते थे अपनी डायरी, अपनी नोटबुक आगे कर देते थे, जिससे अपना पता लिखिए, फोन नंबर लिखिए और अपना आशीर्वाद लिखिए। मैंने देखा है कि कई बार लोग खाली अपना पता लिखते थे, फोन नंबर लिखते थे, वो देखते थे, फिर कहते नहीं नहीं इसमें अपना आशीर्वाद भी लिखिए। ऐसी उनकी बहुत सारी डायरियां हैं, और जहां जाते थे जो कुछ कोई बोलते थे मीटिंग में, उसको नोट करते थे। वो नोट की डायरियां अलग है, आशीर्वाद की डायरियां अलग है। कितनी डायरियां हैं, कितने उनके दस्तावेज हैं, इनको संग्रह करने की, इनको सचित रहने की आवश्यकता है। मैं क्षमा चाहता हूँ, मैंने शायद ज्यादा समय ले लिया है। मैं तो विद्वानों की बात सुनने को उत्सुक हूँ। इतना कहकर मैं अपने सब समाप्त करता हूँ। आप सबने मेरी बात सुनी, जैसे भी जिस भी मैं कर सका हूँ, जिसमें बहुत सी त्रुटियां होंगी, इसमें जो प्रोटोकॉल है या जो मर्यादाएं हैं, शायद मैं उससे भी बाहर बोल गया हूँ। इसके लिए मैं क्षमा चाहता हूँ। आप सबको धन्यवाद।
नमस्कार नेगी जी, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। और आपको सुन के हम सब बहुत अति आनंदित हुए। उनके जीवनी के बारे में जो आपने हमें बताया और जो हमें वो दिया, वो आशीर्वाद की डायरिया, मैं वही सोच के कर रहा हूँ कि अगर किसी के ऊपर वो रिसर्च की जाए तो कितनी महत्वपूर्ण डॉक्यूमेंट हो सकती हैं बहुगुना जी की। सो विद दैट बहुत बहुत थैंक यू सो मच नेगी जी। अब मैं आगे अपने उनके साथ बढ़ता हूँ, मेरे प्रोग्राम के साथ। सो वी हैव विद अस राइट नाउ Seema Purushothaman, who is the faculty at Azim Premji University. Welcome, Seema. Welcome so much. Good evening. She's been trained in agricultural sciences and environmental economics. Her work experience spans across government departments, private sector, voluntary agencies, and she has worked with target communities as farmers and forest fringes to peri-urban interfaces. She continues to engage in action-oriented research, teaching towards sustainable societies through economic models and smallholder farming and higher education. But most importantly, the reason she is with us today is because of her association, personal association with Sunderlal Bahugana as well. She has interacted with him a couple of times. She has documented and worked on the whole movement in the hills, and we are very lucky to have her with us for an interaction with Dr. Jayanta Bandyopadhyay. So over to you, Seema. Please, you can take this forward.
Thank you, Shashwat. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, yes. And
Thank you.
is the audibility good at your end?
Yes, I can hear you, Jayanta.
Yeah.
Good evening to everybody. Today, I'm engaging with two remarkable Indians. one who passed away a fortnight ago, and in whose memory we are all here to celebrate his life. And to talk about him, another remarkable person who has joined us, Professor Jayanta Bandyopadhyay. Jayanta, hailing from West Bengal, after taking his degree in engineering, left for IIT Kanpur to finish his MTech and PhD in a subject area called engineering physics. So in the 70s, once he completed his PhD program, he left for Himalayas. And I think it actually changed his career objectives and probably the outlook towards life. At that time, at that stint in the Himalayas, and especially in the Garhwal region, he met Sunderlal Bahugana, also saw the contradictions between development and environment among the mighty Himalayas, and decided to go ahead with doing a postdoctoral fellowship in the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, exactly on this interdisciplinary field between the environment and development. Coming to his career, it spans from two Indian Institutes of Management from Bangalore to Calcutta, to ICIMOD, the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, Jawaharlal Nehru University, International Academy of Environment in Geneva, the Water Diplomacy Program in Tufts, MIT, Harvard universities, etc. And currently with the Observer Foundation. He is a distinguished fellow there. But more to talk about the contributions that he actually gave to this interdisciplinary field, the interface of development and environment. It is very important to remember from the time Rio Earth Summit happened in the early 90s. So he was called in by the Earth Summit Secretariat to draft what is known as the Constitution of Sustainable Development across the globe, Agenda 21. And from there on, he was also part of Millennium Ecosystem Assessment. He was part of Himalayan Monitoring and Assessment Program, writing the report. He was advising International Union of Conservation of Nature. He was president of Indian Society for Ecological Economics, where I came to know him. And for a long number of years, we have been also in the executive committee of the Indian Society for Ecological Economics. He was also president of Saki Waters, and he was a board member of International Society for Ecological Economics. Apart from that, the actual impact of a reflective academic, an action-oriented academic in Jayanta can be seen in the various policy impacts and court orders that his work has resulted in. So a couple of examples are the ruling on eucalyptus growing as part of social forestry, the limestone mining in Doon Valley, and also regarding the limitations of traditional engineering in large-scale hydroelectric projects in the Himalayas. Well, I mean, there are many things that I would have left, but now the recent book from his list of more than a dozen of them is about environmental sustainability from Himalayas to the oceans. I'm so happy and excited to have Jayanto here to talk about the remarkable personality that Sunderlal Bahugana was, with whom his association has been long, deep, and at a very multimodal dimensions. Thank you, Jayanta, for joining us, and welcome to this conversation on Sunderlal Bahugana.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I was an environmental economics student in the late 80s and in the early 90s, as soon after finishing my environmental economics masters, I happened to visit the Gadwal Himalayas, and that is where I came to know Sunderlal Bahuguna briefly and about his activism. I had only read about till then, and in the context of the by then well-known Chipko movement. But by then even Sundarlal Bahugunaji had already was active in the social sector for nearly 25 years, including the politics that independent the young India was actually experiencing. So, during those visits to the villages of Western Himalayas in the first half of 90s, revealed many facets of Chipko and the people behind it. And this revelation to me actually came from the villages in and around Gopeshwar and Mandal. They talked about poets and activists who were making their landscape well known in a very different sense, because till then the Uttarakhand region was hailed as Dev Bhumi for its mighty mountains and pilgrim centers. Gadwal and Kumaon later on was coming to be known to the world through its women of grit, who were inspired by Gadwali poets and activists that we heard from Negiji now. But this eco-feminist history of the Himalayas society is perhaps unknown to tourists and pilgrims thronging these stunning landscapes. So when I met Bahugunaji after a decade in 2005 in Bangalore, he was talking more about the spiritual connect to conservation than about movements and activism. And that side of his persona I hadn't seen or read about till then. That is when I came across the biography of Sundarlal Bahuguna as an activist, written by George Alfred James. The title was Ecology is Permanent Economy. That was a slogan that Bahuguna used to use in his campaigns. And, after that biography and my interactions with the villagers of Gadwal, the window to Bahuguna's life and Himalayan environmental activism has been Jayanta's writing. That is why it has been an illuminating experience to read Jayanta through his about his experience in the Himalayan environmental movements. So, Jayanta, let's come to this conversation about Sundarlal Bahugunaji. So, can you begin by telling us when and how have you known Sundarlal Bahuguna?
Yes. Like what Negiji has mentioned, I had read about Bahugunaji, I had read his articles, but it was only in 1978, month of May, I actually met him at the Navjivan Ashram in Siliara. I was trying to find my way of creating a research framework for environment and development in the Himalaya. And in that connection, I reached the ashram to meet both Sundarlalji and his wife Vimla Didi. So this was in 1978. The last time I met both of them was in 2019 in Dehradun, when they were staying with their daughter and son-in-law, Dr. Pathak and Madhuri. And that was the last time I met Bahugunaji. So in between these 44 years, I had met him a very, very large number of times, and in particular in the Navjivan Ashram at Siliara, which, like Negiji, is also a tirthasthan for me. It's a sort of place of pilgrimage for me. And this is where many important meetings were held. And I loved to be at Silara, particularly in the company of Vimla Didi and Bahuguna ji. And the number of times I met, number of issues on which I participated were quite large. In this period, I also had the good fortune of listening to Bahuguna ji in his sort of very deep reflections outside the formal meetings. So this is how I slowly came to know him. And the last time, of course, 2019, after that, because of various reasons, including travel restrictions due to COVID, in spite of my willingness to travel to Garhwal, I was unable to. So this is how I will describe my association with him. Seema, the audio link is lost probably. Just check.
Sorry, I was not unmuting myself. Yeah, so I was saying, just like me, many of us know Sunderlal Bahuguna only from his environmental activism onwards. So, can you throw some light on his life before becoming a well known environmental activist?
Yes. Some of the description Negiji has already given. And he was born in a small village a few kilometers upstream of the city of Tehri on Bhagirathi. And of course, Tehri was his nerve center. This is where he went to school, went to college a little bit, and of course, the other aspect of political knowledge, political maturity, he also got from Tehri. And his childhood sort of leader who influenced him very much at the early teen years was Sridev Suman. Sridev Suman was fighting for democracy in the kingdom of Tehri Garhwal, the monarchy versus democracy. And Sridev Suman was jailed in the Tehri jail, and he undertook a fast unto death. And after 84 days of fasting, Sridev Suman passed away. And Bahuguna ji mentioned about Sridev Suman to me a very large number of times, which means that Sridev Suman's passing away, 84 days of fasting, had deeply influenced his young mind. And this is where he started to become politically active. This is something which prepared the foundation for his later activism. After this, of course, he had come in touch with many people. He was very mobile. And the next group of mentors, I would say, he had was Meera Behan and Sarla Behan. And of course, later, the Sarvodaya movement as a whole, and Vinoba ji in particular. So this is how his maturity slowly came up. His ideas also changed. And this is what slowly made him an activist. These are the people who brought him to the fore, and then he took off by himself. So I would say that Miraben, Sarlaben, Vinobaji very much were, and Swami Chidanand of Shivananda Ashram in Rishikesh were among his big mentors.
Interesting.
So this is briefly my answer to your question.
Yeah. So it looks like Bahugunaji was good at collaborating with diverse kinds of people. There were Sarvodaya followers, there were politicians, there were, spiritual leaders, and of course there were villages, including women from all across Gadwal. That said, so by now he is etched in our mind as being responsible for conserving the Himalayan treasures. But what will be the main characteristic of Bahuguna that made him a good activist?
Yeah, is it? Yeah, okay. Again, I think the foundation of his very deep-rooted activism, very wise activism, was much before he became known as environmentalist. And I think the most crucial period of his life, and also that of his wife Vimla Didi, was in the early 50s to mid 50s, when they decided to get married, and the condition for the marriage was that Sunderlal Bahuguna ji will discontinue to work for party-based politics. He was already a secretary in the Congress party in Uttar Pradesh, a very influential position, and he could have been a very powerful political leader in due course of time. But the condition for Vimla Didi willing to get married to Bahuguna ji was that he has to discontinue his party-based politics and come to society-based organizational activity. This is what Gandhiji said, that you have to go back to remote villages. So they agreed, Bahugunaji agreed, and they decided to establish their ashram or their settlement in a village called Silyara, which at that time, when they decided to move to Silyara, needed 2 full days of walk from the nearest city point of Teri. This is the nature of remoteness. And now, of course, it takes about 3.5 hours by bus. But at that time, it was 2 days, 1.5 to 2 days of walking from the town of Teri. Now, having shifted there, having started the Navjivan Ashram there, they faced enormous economic difficulties. They were organizing the forest workers, they were organizing the local women, and their financial resources were very limited. Bahugunaji, of course, mentions that Patrakarita, which is journalism, was one of his ways of getting some money. So this hard life for several years, organizing people, not running away because of economic hardship, I think is the steaming of their political willingness to work for the people. And in my opinion, at a later time, slowly they used this training for further activism. Bahugunaji often mentioned that an activist must have in Sanskrit, or it is Buddha's word, Trishna Chai. That means you have to have your desires limited, under control, possibly as much sort of absent as possible. And number two is your freedom from fear. So these two strong features, when they were in an isolated village in Siliara and working towards organizing the local forest workers and the women, there were attempts to sort of trouble them, possibly life-threatening trouble, and they were out of it because they overcame the fear. They limited their requirements, they overcame their fear, and these two helped them in becoming what they were at a later time. So I would say that this is where the activists Sunderlal ji and Vimla Didi were finally shaped. Thank you. Again, Seema, the audio is down.
Sorry, I was telling that conviction and perseverance, along with frugality, actually saw them through, along with fearlessness, along the two movements that they were associated in their younger days. That's what I got from this response of yours. His long hunger strike in the context of anti-Terry dam agitation. Have you been there during that time? Have you known about the hunger strike closely?
Yes, and occasionally I had been there. It is he had two bouts of hunger strike. I would not use the word hunger strike because he never used it. He said, it is my prayerful fast. So I would say it is his prayerful fast on the Terry Dam issue. And one of these evenings, he had his residence of a small hut made on the bank of the river Bhagirathi, called Ganga Himalaya Kuti. And he used to stay there, and a lot of activists used to stay with him. And his ideas of Terry Dam, one evening he was saying, this is such a mammoth technical structure that how can common people think of having access to decision making on that. So this comes from Meera Behen's many writings, and Bahuguna ji thought through the largeness of the Terry Dam, and the marginalization of the common people in its running, in the sharing of the electricity. And this was his opinion on the dam. He never said no dams. His idea was of sort of small hill stream based micro hydropower, which he said that bijli banawa khala khala. That means khala means a small stream. You create electricity from small streams. So his problem with Tehri Dam was that centralization of power in running a huge project and its impact on democratic governance of any society. So his opposition to Tehri Dam was one of these. Other was, of course, the traditional factor of displacement of large number of people, submersion of fertile agricultural land and forests. So what distinct feature of his opposition was beyond these two aspects, that is submersion and displacement, was the issue of who controls these technologies and who ensures that popular wish will run these technologies, or these technologies will run the people. That was his concern.
No wonder that Sunderlal Bahuguna can be easily identified as India's icon of environmentalism and the environmental movement, perhaps. So also, as we were talking about his collaboration with diverse constituencies and people like you, coming from a technology background, but at the same time actually talking about environmental justice when even United Nations had just begun celebrating World Environment Day on one particular day in a year. The same year, actually, Chipko, as a continuation or a culmination of a series of forest agitations were happening, and Sunderlal Bahuguna, at the behest of the people of the region and the intellectuals and academicians, taking this movement and spreading it across the Himalayas. But I think also the fact that he was a prolific speaker and writer also helped the cause of making his activism very successful in that sense, because we don't see any big dam projects as successful as we would imagine at the pace it would have come from the times that he was agitating against it. So in that course of an environmental agitation that actually rose to stardom from a very obscure Himalayan village, there could have been many other lesser known personalities, contributors among the warriors in the Western Himalayas, the women of Reni and other villages, Chipko poets. There were, as I have known and met, there were Chandi Prasad Bhatt, Govind Singh Rawat, Shamsher Singh Bisht, etc. in the Gadwal region who were with him. Who are some of the other people who worked closely with him? Of course, we have talked at length, but in your knowledge, who a couple of people whom we should remember today?
Well, first and foremost, I think Bahuguna ji would have been a different Bahuguna ji had not Vimla Didi been there with him as an activist of equal strength, wisdom, and working among the people of Garhwal. So I think Vimla Didi is the first and foremost individual, I would say, had been his collaborator. It is very difficult to talk about other collaborators, particularly collaborators spread much beyond Siliara. Whether Chandi Prasad ji or Shamsher Singh ji or many, many hundreds of very reputed Sarvodaya activists or environmentalists from various parts of India as well as on various centers in the world. It is difficult to enlist, and I'm not going to make a listing, but I'm going to talk about two individuals. Probably, again, they were as useful in shaping Bahuguna ji as Vimla Didi, or a little bit less closely, but they are two. One is Ghanshyam Raturi ji. Ghanshyam Raturi ji used to live in a village right below Silera, about 200, 300 meters below Silera, and was the most remarkable poet of the environment movement in Garhwal. His song still vibrates all through in the forest movement areas. The second is Dhum Singh Negi ji. Dhum Singh Negi ji was central to the functioning of the Navjivan Ashram. Bahuguna ji was very much involved in spreading the message, as you have correctly said. But Dhum Singh Negi ji was the anchor man. So I would particularly say that among his very close associates, there are many apologies to everyone that I am not able to give a list of names, but Raturi ji and Negi ji were close and close to Silera. And beyond that, there are many. And it will be a independent program on how he encouraged people. And I myself have been encouraged tremendously. And my whole research framework was changed by Negi ji and Bahuguna ji. When they said that if you want to understand the forest and people relations in Garhwal, don't come in a bus, don't have 1 day or 2 days to stay. You have to come with a lot of time. You have to come with at least a month. You must be willing to walk in rough terrains. You have to live with the villagers. And that is what actually has created a new research framework, which turned me from a metal physicist to a mountain researcher. And in particular today, because Bahuguna ji often suggested that I help in the Supreme Court application writing, the appeal writing on the Tehri Dam with my engineering research background. And I did that. And that's how I am today working on major policy issues on Himalayan rivers. And that is not Indian Himalaya, not Brahmaputra, Ganga. It starts from the Yellow River to Yangtze, all the way down to the rivers like Tarim or Amudarya. So Himalaya is a big producer and possibly the largest producer of fresh water in the world, which has not been yet given the due respect. And Bahuguna ji was among the first few people to push for a formulation of a Himalayan policy. His Himalaya may have been a little bit less restricted, but it is very important to have a Himalayan policy even today, particularly when climate change is attacking Himalaya at a rate 2 to 3 times higher than the rate which we observed in the plains of the world. If the plains of the world are having 2 degrees by the end of this century, from the pre-industrial level, the Tibetan plateau might get 5 to 6 degrees of warming. So we need to protect the so-called water tower of Asia, and where the largest 3 billion people depend on the Himalayan waters. And it was the foresight of Bahuguna ji which pushed me, advised me, encouraged me to get into research on Himalayan rivers. So that is how he got many scientists in the world involved to do research on environmental issues.
Excellent instance of how good academics can join hands with sincere activism to make solid change on the ground. Let's now think more about Chipko. You know, the popular imagery of Garhwal Himalayas, at least in the 90s, narrow, dangerous roads, steep cliffs, landslides, floods, cloudbursts, overburdened women carrying loads of firewood and water, men generally seen smoking hookah, sitting around. From this kind of a society, how did Bahuguna and his associates manage to steer a small forest movement to make India a pioneer in environmental activism? So, what was, in that sense, his contribution to Chipko Andolan in making it so globally well known?
Well, as Negiji has mentioned, Bogunaji was a master author. When I was working in the Indian Institute of Management in Bangalore, where Vijay had been my colleague, Bogunaji was visiting, and at the end of his stay, I dropped him at the Bangalore railway station, and he reached Delhi by train on the second day morning. And later in the day, on the third day morning, I found that several things that Bogunaji and I had discussed during his stay in Bangalore 2 days back is already in a written, excellent center page article in one of the national dailies. That means he wrote this full article while traveling in a train from Bangalore to Delhi. He was a master writer, and that spread the message of forests and forest conflicts far outside the actual physical extent of the Uttarakhand area. And again, the international press also was there, and that is how the message of forest spread. But the message of the use of the forests in the international ecological stabilization, and that forests have to be totally protected, also came from the call given by Bahuguna on the ecological role of the forests. He was highly influenced by a book by Eric Ekholm entitled Losing Grounds. Eric Ekholm's book is not scientifically and technically very, very strong. In fact, in my own writings, I have criticized his book, but his book was had triggered Bahugunaji's mind with respect to that forest cover leads to water security. Water security leads to food security, and economic security of a region is rooted in particularly the forests. And you must recall that in the Uttarakhand area, forests cover 80 to 85% of the land. Private land is very small. Private land cannot provide the food for all the people all the time. And access to forest is important. And this is where the access to forest, where 90% or 85% of the area is forest, the villagers felt that this is their property. Whereas in the plains, you have 20% forest, 15% forest, and that's a big number. 80%, 85% of the land is private land. A lot of food is prepared or produced. But in the mountains, you have 10%, 15% of the land as farmland, and that too, not good quality farmland. So the importance of the forests, importance of the people's access to forest and stability of the forest, and at a later time, in some of the work that I have published, I have said that it is not paddy, it is not wheat, it is not apple, it is not orange, which is the main product of the Himalaya, it is water. Water is the main product of the Himalaya, and water of the Himalaya keeps about 3 billion people alive in Asia. So this is how the global sort of spread of the global spread of the idea of forests as the sort of kingpin or queenpin of sustainability was spread, and that is how Bahugunaji's writings became very, very useful throughout the world.
That is so amazing. Like half a century ago, to imagine the connect between sustainability of economic growth and distributive development lying in the ecosystem could be conveyed so well by a leader from remote Himalayas. Now let us, come to the present times, inundated with challenges. Never before have we faced so many, in so short a time. But the possibilities and opportunities are also equally varied. In such an era like this one, where we have pandemic, just impacting everywhere, everybody, while information and communication technology, biotechnology, space explorations also happen on the other side, how do we imagine, how would future generations, how should they imagine leaders and movements? Like, how should a person like Sunderlal Bahugana should be remembered in the future while looking at the current world where we are in?
Yes, this is possibly the central issue of the day where we are celebrating his life. I would say that he was a remarkable human being of high qualities and fearlessness, creative thinking, and ability to accommodate diverse opinions of diverse people. Now, he, in my opinion, will remain as my sort of Guruji as far as I am concerned. I miss him very much. I miss his advice, but future has to move forward, and we have to consider Bahugunaji not only as a leader of a particular activity of forest conservation, but much deeper in his mind were some thoughts which emerged as, say, a prayerful fast for the Tehri Dam, or obstruction to the forest felling by either the contractors or the government bodies. So we have to go at the core of this tremendously powerful intellect and social activist. And again, going back, Trishna Kshay, Bhaya Mukti, and very simple, frugal lifestyle. If these three are conveyed to our young people, I think Bahugunaji will be remembered in a most effective way.
I think we are running short of time. So, taking the message of ecology for a sustainable and equitable economy, also apart from what Jayanta just summarized from Sunderlal Bahugunaji's thoughts, I think can we take a question if there are a couple of questions, Jayanta?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so let's see if there are questions, and then we can hand over to Shashwat. But it was such a retrospective journey to the life of Sunderlal Bahugana, Chipko, and Tehri Dam. I really enjoyed it, and I hope it's recorded and it will be available for future reference and for students who would like to know about it further. Thank you, Jayanta and Shashwat.
Thank you
welcome.
so much. Thank you so much, Seema, and thank you so much, Jayanta. It's very heartening to know these aspects of life between you, Jayanta, today and Negiji. We have come to realize so many unknown things about his life, from his Ashirwad diaries to his his theory about controlling your desires and being fearless. It's so important to know about these aspects, which for the future generation would be very much relevant and important. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And Seema, thank you so much for for this wonderful conversation that you held on with you. So yeah, so I know this, we can have these conversations going on for a long time, and hopefully we'll do so in the future. But for now, we'll proceed with the program in celebrating Bahugunaji's life. Thank you so much.
Namaskar.
Thank you. So now I'll bring to fore Vijay and her friend Kavya. So before I hand over to Kavya, I would like to just briefly introduce Vijay again. So he's Professor Vijay Patki, who wears two caps, with equal facility. He's been active in the theatre, and that's where most of us know him from, for over 55 years. But he's also been a management professional for over 45 years. His academic and professional journey began in biology and went on through social psychology to clinical psychology to a long applied research career in organizational psychology, ending with a tenured professorship in the Indian Institute in Management. His areas of special interest are organization and institutional development. But the one which we all know very popularly is the one in the theatre. He is a founder trustee of the Bangalore Little Theatre Foundation, also known as BLT. It is Bangalore's oldest and most widely respected theatre society, created in 1960, and now it's in Diamond Jubilee year. Besides that, Vijay is also a playwright with over 50 plays in his collection. He's a series editor of 10 volumes of play being published by Bangalore Little Theatre. So, a warm welcome back again, Vijay. And we also have with us Kavya. Kavya has a master's degree in development studies from Indian Institute of Technology, Madras. The formal education has been combined with her creative pursuits in theatre, communication, and storytelling, and she is working closely with Vijay. She joined the play development program in BLT, where her first major play was Monsters in the Dark, co-authored with Ravi Chari. She's currently working on two play scripts, one of which is on Chipko Andolan as the backdrop, and she was showing that copy while she was having a word with Jayanta there. So yeah, so that's very interesting. So warm welcome to you, Kavya, as well. And they will be there's something interesting they'll be doing with us. They'll be reading from a script of an upcoming play, an excerpt from it. So over to you, Kavya.
Good evening, everybody. Greetings on World Environment Day. It is an honor to be able to pay our respects in a small way to the memory of Sri Sunderlal Bahugana with a play that has been inspired by his life and his work. The play should be ready for performance later this year. Today, we will be reading a few selected passages from the script. Vijay, you're on mute, okay? No luck. You're still on mute, Vijay.
Is it okay? Can you hear me now?
Yes, can.
Right. The play is set in Uttarakhand. In the play, we have a young man in a rural community in the hills in search of purpose in his life. Purpose in life is out of reach when you have a hand-to-mouth existence. Trying to manage some income from some work that will somehow please the tourists coming to the hills. One day, the young man finds that the work table made of oak wood is talking to him. His grandmother is thrilled because she realizes that it is the spirit of his grandfather.
There are other characters in the play crisscrossing each other through the scenes. The background holding the scenes and the characters together is the ecological crisis and the disastrous consequences of this, which are clearly and evidently man made. The play also looks at the difference between clever answers that all of us have about the environment and the real questions, which sometimes remain unattended to. In the short scene that we are going to read for you today, we see two people rehearsing their speeches before mirrors on opposite corners of the stage. One corner has a teenage girl in the city preparing for an elocution contest in her school. Her mother suggests a passage that is sure to be a winner in the contest. The letter from Chief Seattle to the great white chief in Washington. In the other corner is Sunderlal Bahuguna. He too is rehearsing a speech, his acceptance speech on receiving the Right Livelihood Award, which was, of course, on behalf of the Chipko movement.
The schoolgirl is Sanya. The part will be read by my colleague Kavya. Sanya is prompted and coached by her mother in the kitchen. I will, with all humility, read the part of Sri Sundarlalji.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today, on the occasion of World Environment Day, I would like to give a speech. This is the speech given by the Native American leader, Chief Seattle, when the American colonizers came to take their lands. Nobody on the internet is sure if this really happened. Sanya, don't say that. But it's here in my textbook. So I guess it's okay. Okay, let me begin. Yonder sky has wept tears of compassion upon my people for centuries untold, and which to us appears changeless and eternal, may change. Today is fair. Tomorrow it may be overcast with clouds. My words are like the stars that never change.
This award is being presented in a city where Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, one of our great Indians, was honored with the presentation of the Nobel Prize 74 years ago. He was the one who had reminded India and the world of the deep significance of the message of our Aranya, or forest culture. This culture was born and nurtured in the forests, where sages and seers, the teachers of society, led a life of austerity and penance with their disciples. They pondered over the problems of humankind and with their knowledge and wisdom provided thoughtful guidance to society. Good word. It works. Pondered. I love that word.
It matters little where we pass the remnant of our days. They will not be many. The Indian's night promises to be dark. Not a single star of hope hovers above the horizon. Sad-voiced winds moan in the distance. Grim fate seems to be on the red man's trail. And wherever he will hear the approaching footsteps of his fell destroyer and prepare stolidly to meet his doom, as does the wounded doe that hears the approaching footsteps of the hunter. Take the lines seriously, please. A few more moons, a few more winters, and not one of the descendants of the mighty hosts that once moved over this broad land or lived in happy homes protected by the Great Spirit will remain to mourn over the graves of a people once more powerful and more hopeful than yours. But why should I mourn at the untimely fate of my people? Tribe follows tribe, and nation follows nation, like the waves of the sea. It is the order of nature, and regret is useless. Your time of decay may be distant, but it will surely come for even the white man whose God walked and talked with him as friend to friend cannot be exempt from the common destiny. We may be brothers after all. We will see. Spooky. Mom, can I do some other play, please? No, there's no other speech. Someone Indian? Like us Indian, not those Indians? No, Sanya, there's nothing here. When I was in university, I did a class on the environment, and this was the one thing I read about. It's very powerful. Please keep going. Fine. And when the last red man shall have perished, and the memory of my tribe shall have become a myth among the white men, these shores will swarm with the invisible dead of my tribe. And when your children's children think themselves alone in the field, the store, the shop, upon the highway, or in the silence of the pathless woods, they will not be alone. In all the earth, there is no place dedicated to solitude. At night, when the streets of your cities and villages are silent and you think them deserted, they will throng with the returning hosts that once filled them and still love this beautiful land. The white man shall never be alone. Let him be just and deal kindly with my people, for the dead are not powerless. Dead, did I say? There is no death, only a change of worlds. Poor Chief Seattle.
We should have been saving every single standing green tree in the Himalaya that served as a sentry to save us from the landslides. But this realization did not come to us all of a sudden. It must be admitted that to begin with, Chipko was an economic movement, and we looked upon forests as a source of employment through tree felling and providing raw material for industries. The long sufferings of hill women have guided the activists to reach new heights in their movement. When these persevering mothers of the future generations dictated that forests were their maternal homes, which provided water, food, fodder, and fuel. Both the trees and the mothers teach that to live and also to be ready to die for the sake of others proves to be the real fountain of bliss. Thus came the famous anthem, "What to the forest bear, soil, water, and pure air. Soil, water, and pure air are the basis of life. Excellent. A few more lines, and I think we've got it all. Oh, I hope this speech will be remembered. Thank you. We're done, Shaswat.
Thank you so much.
Shashwat.
Yes, yes, yes. I was mutely watching and enjoying this session between the two of you. So yes, now Vijay, now you have the honors. We have, you promised us earlier that you'll talk about Visthar and you'll talk about David. So now is the time for you to talk about Visthar and David.
Would you like me to introduce David now or after the film?
So
Now?
let me, yeah, bring him on board. Yes, I'll have him on board.
Okay, we have David on. We need to unmute and we're ready. Okay. All right. It's a great pleasure to introduce David Salvaraj to those gathered here today. David is a man of many talents who has also worn many caps in his lifelong commitment to social justice and peace in all the ways that these ideas can be accomplished. He is recognized widely as a trainer, educator, writer, actor, and singer, as well as an organizer and thought leader. An ecological perspective has always been a strong undercurrent in his work, both in thought and in practice. He is the co-founder of Visthar, a civil society organization that served as a facilitator for the programs of other NGOs in the development sector. This facilitator role is served effectively through a beautifully developed training and conference center on the outskirts of Bangalore. I have been privileged to know Visthar and David from the formative years and to have contributed in some small ways to its growth and development. Over to you, Shaswat.
Yeah, so we have something interesting when we were talking about this whole program. One of the things that we really wanted to do was to have a tree plantation done. There's no better way to celebrate Bahuguna, as we say, by having a tree planted in his name. And David, very nicely and very courteously, he jumped at the prospect and his beautiful campus in Bangalore. There was a tree plantation drive done. I'd just like to play a brief video of that exercise. There was a beautiful Indian poem also being read there. So with your permission, I'll just play that video.
Remember Sunderlal Bahugana. We will do this through a symbolic action of planting a tree. Before planting, I will read a Native American poem. It's a prayer to the earth. Bahugana is someone who listened to the voices, the earth, the forest, the trees, and also to the people who had a symbiotic relationship with earth. The earth prayer. Earth, teach me stillness as the grasses are stilled with light. Earth, teach me suffering as the old stones suffer with memory. Earth, teach me humility as blossoms are humble with beginning. Earth, teach me caring as the mother who succors caring. Earth, teach me courage as the tree which stands all alone. Earth, teach me limitation as the ant which crawls on the ground. Earth, teach me freedom as the eagle which soars in the sky. Earth, teach me resignation, as the leaves which die in the fall. Earth, teach me regeneration, as the seed which rises in the morning. Earth, teach me to forget myself, as melted snow forgets its life. Earth, teach me to remember kindness, as dry leaves do with earth.
Yeah. So that was a tree planting done. So David, I would like to just invite you to, talk briefly about that. Which species of the tree was that, and where did you plant it, and also share with us a beautiful poem. I think so. WWF has shared with you on Ghansham Raturi. So if you could do that, please.
Well, thank you very much, Vijay and Kavya, for the idea. Vijay, for the introduction and welcome. At the very outset, I do want to thank persons who have spoken before me because there were so many poignant moments. And I think that is what I will take back with me. So, for those who spoke before me, I'm very humbled and thank you for that. Bahuguna ji stands tall as someone in my early formative years enabled me to make a critique of the anthropocentric worldview that we have bought into. And it is this anthropocentric worldview which seems to shape so much of our destructive development. But along with this critique, he also showed us the need for a symbiotic relationship with the earth and other life forms. It was this critique and this perspective which led me and Visthar to be part of the Narmada Bachao Andolan. And so this evening, along with Sunderlal ji, we remember Medha Patkar, many other activists, poets, artists, and of course, the Adivasis of India. I'd like to read for you an English translation of lines by Ghansham Raturi. To weave garments for barren earth, plant new trees and make new forests. To save the earth from impending danger, come one, come all, get together. For forests are our life and soul. They are the sources of rivers all. Rains and springs are created in them. The soil, water, and air are because of them. Trees are blessed even by God. He came once to save them from the odds that are worshipped by mankind. Without considering their safety, all planning is blind. Apricot, apple, walnut are their treasure. We derive from them fodder, wood, and water. Once, Uttarakhand was heaven on earth, where in deep forests, Vedas and Puranas took birth. Now, to drive away the ruthless destroyers, come one, come all, get together. Now it has become our religion to save the forests from destruction.
Thank you so much, David, for that wonderful rendition. Uh, that's so very true, and it so holds true even today, and more so as we move forward into a world that is completely beset by challenges of global warming and climate change. I I wish if some way we could imbue all these values and all these learnings that we had from from environmentalists and socialist people like uh, Sunderlal Bahugana ji, Negi ji is with us, and Ghansham Raturi, and the learnings that we can draw. It would be a great moment for all of us. So yeah, it has been a great pleasure. Vijay, would you like to share some of your thoughts on the proceedings that we had?
Now, it's been nice and smooth, and you've handled it very well, Shaswat. Let's.
So yeah, so yes, on this, there's one thing that we all have been knowing, the great slogan that came from Garhwal, "Ye kya hai jangal ke upkar, dharti pani aur bayar." So with that message, I'd like to invite someone who has been working in this domain. There's Radhika from WWF India. So Radhika, a warm welcome to you. Good evening, and I'd
Thank
like
you.
to hand over you. You are there to do the vote of thanks and share your thoughts with us as well.
Yes, thank you, Shashwat and Vijay, especially for making this come true today. I think so. We all need a push, we all need inspiration, and nothing better than Sri Sundarlal Bahuguna to inspire us on this day. Through the day, evening, I had goosebumps, and I enjoyed every moment. And I think so we are all going to go back extremely inspired with more josh and commitment to reimagine this world and do our little bit. I think so every bit counts, and it's absolutely essential, and it's essential to have such forums where we can get inspired and move on. So thank you, and I love the look on Vijay's face. He's happy, and he and Kavya reached out to all of us. So there's a lot of people who worked on this, and I think so. Gratitude is a very important thing, and virtue, and that's what we feel today. We feel inspired and we feel grateful that just a suggestion and so many people and organizations came together to say, "Hey, let's do this. It's a brilliant idea." So first of all, I'd like to, of course, thank Bangalore Little Theatre for conceiving the event and getting all the organizations together. The theatre organization has a commitment to education, enrichment, and has a major program of sustainability education. Thank you, Professor Vijay Patki, for facilitating the event, and Ms. Kavya for sharing the excerpt from the new play. We cannot wait to see it, and we must be invited for that. Our guest of our honor, Professor Jayanta Bandyopadhyay and Shri Dhum Singh Negi, for readily accepting this invitation and sharing your enriching, experiences and wisdom. Uh, I cannot deny I was a little jealous, and thank you for sharing all your experiences and all your learnings. Wipro Sustainability and Social Initiatives for backing the event from the start and helping from behind the scene. Wipro, in fact, provided the support to BLT Sustainability Education Program. Thank you, Mr. P.S. Narayan and Mr. Lingaraj Dini at Wipro. Visthar, the unique civil society organization located outside Bangalore, which has constantly adopted ecological perspective to social transformation tasks. This is Thank you, Mr. David Salvaraj, for joining us. Having the tree plantation in these difficult times and reading out a beautiful poem. And finally, of course, Azim Premji University was the first to step in with this idea to pay homage to Sri Sundarlal Bahugana on World Environment Day. The team of the university took charge of the whole organization and streaming this event. Thank you, Professor Harini Nagendra, Seema Purushothaman for providing the rich content, and Mr. Shashwat for efficiently running this and controlling our mics and cameras. Thank you so much. And of course, to my team in WWF who did a little bit of, doing some outreach, getting a good audience. And of course, my colleague Neha, who selected the poem. So thank you, everyone. And let's stay inspired and let's do a little bit. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Radhika. That's a beautiful finale to this program. As Sunderlal Bahugana ji popularized the saying that ecology is the permanent economy. So that's a lesson and a message that we'd like to end up with. And I'm sure this conversation that we had today, right from the poems that in Gadwali to an Indian poem to the rendition of Ghanshyam Rituri in English, I'm sure this will be visited and viewed by many people going forward, and there's a lot of lessons we all can draw. So here's wishing everyone a happy World Environment Day, and hope we are conscious and we are able to live up to the theme of ecosystem restoration. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Radhika. Thank you so much, Vijay, and thank you everyone on board, including Negiji, who was joining us from Garhwal, Jayanta, who's joining us from Calcutta, Seema, and David, and everyone. Thank you so much.